So first, like, before I give you the definition, like a lot of people assume they know what white supremacy is, and they oftentimes talk about, you know, racism, the black versus white, black
Right.
versus blue, all those things. But if we remember, before we had Jim Crow, before we had mass incarceration, there was a situation in the United States that really classified our people as not even human beings. And so
Right.
at the root of white supremacy is dehumanization.
So
And
you
so,
say dehumanization, that means, explain that to the
so
people.
primary example, we have here in the state of Georgia, where after Emancipation Proclamation was passed and signed into law, what you had was people who were now free people in the state code. They created statutes, laws that
Right.
allowed people to be processed and pursued just because they were black people, that they were Negroes. And so dehumanization finds a way always to really classify groups of people, individuals, the same way we saw Ahmaud Arbery. It wasn't
Right.
simply because he was black that he was shot down. It was because that there was somebody who thought that they had more power, that they were more important, that they were citizens, and Ahmaud Arbery was just another person in the street that should not have any dignity or respect. And so it's a power dynamic, brother.
Mm.
It's all about power. It's nothing. It's not skin color. And so when we get caught up in
So
the skin
let me
color,
so it's not skin color.
not at all.
Wow.
Not
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
And if we limit it to skin color, we play their game, and they win every time. They win every time.
So explain to me, when you say if we limit it to skin color, then we lose. I want to make sure I understand this.
We lose because you got some quote unquote black people that are just as invested in white supremacy as quote unquote the white man. And so for us, it's about systems and culture, and you know, the approach of how we really organize our community. And so when we talk about no permanent friends and no permanent enemies, only permanent interests, and that's the liberation of my people is anybody who's a human being who got breath in their body.
Right.
Because I'm a believer that says like everything that has breath.
Right. So basically,
when we saw George Floyd.
Right. So basically, like you said, we all in this together.
Yeah.
Right. So when we look at, when you say, because when you say white supremacy, it sounds like you're separating the two, because I just want to understand, because if somebody was to tell me white supremacy, I would automatically think that comes with being white and feeling that you're superior, and then that you're black and they feel that they're more superior than you. But you're basically saying that if you look at any human being as if they're lesser, then that's white supremacy.
Most definitely. So you look at, every time we talk about blackness, you can't escape whiteness because it's a contrast. And so you notice how we talk about Black Lives Matter, and people's response is what? All lives matter.
Right.
In technicality, that should be true, but the reality is not. You don't see white people blasting on social media and blasting on, you know, television every day. It's black people. And so when you look at whiteness, we have to ask what whiteness is. It's not a color. No person who quote unquote is white actually looks white. They're apricot looking people. They're like a lighter, you know, shade or whatever. And I'm not. Well, I'm black, you know, but some of us are brown and other things. But it's a way to describe a group of people, and it does result from skin color and pigmentation, because they throughout history you see it constructed that way. But at the heart of it, I'm talking about at the root of white supremacy is not skin color, even though it shows up in many ways through skin color and colorism. I mean, you even look at how black people treat its women. Right. We got Breonna Taylor right now, whose killers are still out on the street. We're not. Well, there are some people in Louisville organizing, but as a whole, we're talking about George Floyd. We're talking about Ahmaud Arbery, right? We're talking about all these black men, but we got black women, black trans women. We got black people that are dying, literally.
Right.
And so we have to really be inclusive and intentional about what it is that we're really fighting for.
So with, and that makes a lot of sense, to be intentional about what you're fighting for. So with Ahmaud Arbery's killers basically being charged, would that be considered a hate crime? Would that be considered white supremacy?
It was murder.
It's murder, cold-blooded.
It's murder,
So,
period. It
so
was a lynching.
right.
Because, go ahead.
No. And so what is that? Because I want to take out where the white supremacy played a part in this. So I can understand what we marched for a couple weeks ago. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys got one of those bills passed. And I love to hear about that. Congratulations, by the way. But I'm just trying to separate the two from, because when you say lynching, I'm already thinking like, slavery, modern day, hunt you down with the guard dog, you know what I'm saying, in the house Negro. And
this is what people felt like were not able to see because the media didn't tell that story. One, Ahmaud Arbery's murderers didn't get arrested because the video was surfaced or leaked.
Okay.
White supremacy teaches us that it's a process, it's a system that is at work, right? That continues to put people that oftentimes are black in positions where they end up dead or in jail or poor. And so we look at Ahmaud Arbery's case.
Right.
The reason why we are able to say that they got indicted yesterday was not because of that video, because the video for me reminds me of those white people who used to lynch our black brothers, as the song would say, strange fruit hanging from poplar trees. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
That literally is what happened in Ahmaud Arbery case, because after they lynched Ahmaud, they were the ones who released the video. They were the ones who gave the video to the public. They were the ones who said, this video is going to exonerate us. And then the police and the department, the district attorney had the video 3 months before the whole world saw it.
Wow.
And so through the persistence of Ahmaud's mother, if she didn't say, George Barnhill, you have a conflict of interest, you do not need to prosecute this case, they would be free on the streets right now. That is white supremacy. That is white supremacy. And we play into it because everybody was sharing that video. Everybody was saying, we need to see the video. The world needs to see it. It had nothing to do with the video because Emmett Till's body was shown.
Right.
They saw what they did. And Emmett Till still don't have justice till this day. That is white supremacy.
Wow.
It has
that's basically what's going on with the Breonna Taylor situation, because wow. So the things that you guys were marching for and protesting for, was it explain to me what that was and which one you guys got passed? And congratulations on that, by the way. I was there. I felt it in the air. I mean, I saw, what you led. I saw it in the people's faces. And everybody just wanted, some type of movement on what they was pushing for. So congratulations on that.
Appreciate it. But I'll pause because, as soon as we started celebrating that bill, they came out with, so we had to fight against police protection. So when we're protesting and somebody says F-12, right now in the state of Georgia, they also passed a law simultaneously while we were in Rashad Brooks' funeral. They passed a law giving police protection so that if, say for instance, we get into an altercation or we had a protest and we say the police do something crazy, and the burden to prove that they have misconduct is so high. Now, under the state law, if the governor signs this bill, is that they can not only, we can get prosecuted for that, they can file civil claims against us because we weren't able to prove that they actually did official misconduct. And so
the police can file.
Yep.
If I complain, they can file a countersuit against me to say that never happened. That is white supremacy. Wow. That when we go up to that Capitol and say Black lives should not be murdered, the first thing they respond with is, well, we need to protect police officers too. Police officers were the one who killed Rashad Brooks. Right. And so instead of us celebrating a victory, now we have to deal with the fact that our people are more in danger. When we ask for, we're not even asking, we're telling them to do their jobs in a way, right? They've done nothing to save Black people. And so we celebrated that day, but initially we had to get back on it, because when I tell you Black people are dying, there was a case in Statesboro. There's a case
in Randolph County. There's so many Black people dying.
Yes, and I saw today they celebrated the kid that actually got killed with the play gun, and I think
Tamir Rice.
Yes, Tamir Rice. Let me, forgive me not for not saying his name. I just think it's fascinating that we're fighting for something, and I'm starting to really understand what white supremacy means, because we're fighting for something that should be a given. Like, it should just be what it is. It's just like if you kill a animal to get a fur, like Peter on deck. They're not playing. You know what I mean? They're stepping up. If you harm a pet, I mean, you got, pet organizations that come out in full force and they fight for the lives of cats and dogs and whatever. And to see my people out here fighting for the right to live and still with loopholes in it, it confuses me. Even to be at the Capitol with you guys and marching, and see, it was a older lady there. She had to be maybe like 68, 70, and she said her son was killed by police brutality maybe 13, 14 years ago, and it was no justice. But just to see the look on her face, like we was getting some traction on it, it confuses me, because like, what do you do? What do you do besides march, besides protest, besides complain, to get some movement on the fact that you just can't kill other human beings based on how you feel or what you see is right or wrong? Because when I look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, it's like you took his life because you felt he was in the wrong. When I look at the Rashad Brooks case, you took his life because you felt he was in the wrong. George Floyd, you took his life because you felt he was in the wrong. So who is the gatekeeper, and who says who gets to live or not? That's like, how do you fight for that?
We have, and this is where my preacher in me comes out, we are literally in a war.
Okay.
Not against flesh and blood, but against spirits. And I believe that a lot of us, when we were fighting this war, and that's one of the reasons why I got into NAACP, because they have the infrastructure to fight it. We've done a very bad job, in the last several years of being able to explain what it is that we need to do. But I believe that the infrastructure is there. I'm a military guy, I did 8 years Army. We need to organize our people, but not just organize them to show up to an election, because what I've heard really pisses me off, that when we're talking about people being murdered in the street, the first response we got is show up to the polls in November.
And by
That's
the way, like,
unacceptable.
I'm gonna be all the way honest. I've been the advocate of that, because I feel that you have to fight battles on all fronts. But just being there with you and marching and just seeing what's really going on, you have to ask yourself, like, okay, that's one part of it, but it's like it's a very small part from what I'm seeing.
One of my friends, that's right. One of my friends, Tiffany Dina Lawton, who's the national director of the NAACP, she said something, and I'll never forget. She said, voting is insufficient, but yet it is so very necessary.
Got it.
And so we have to vote, yes. But what we do not do is compromise with white supremacy. We don't show up with hopes of, well, maybe we'll get a little piece of the pie, because that's the lie of white supremacy, convincing us that we got to work twice as hard to get half of what they got, when in reality, most of our people end up with nothing.
Right, because the way the wealth gap is real. It's like, we got probably have to come back and have a whole nother conversation about the wealth gap, but it's real. It's really real. It's really real.
It's it's crazy, because when we look at how people always ask themselves, well, what do we do? Like, what direction do we do? What do we do right now to make this happen? One, we got to first be able to recognize the power of education and reading and literature. We need to open up our imaginations. And I don't say that very idealistic, but I'm really honest when I say, and I'm very intentional when I say, we have to imagine a new possibility.
Okay. Explain.
And a possibility when it comes to our economic system, our collective economic strength, our imagination of what it looks like to raise a family, what the family unit actually looks like, how relationships are engaged in this new moment, because we can't fight this war and then still be trying to play lovey-dovey all the time. Like, it literally takes every bit of you. And so when you become focused on this, and everybody plays their role, everybody does not need to be at the Capitol, everybody does not need to protest. Sometimes we need people who are able to build community, right?
Right.
Be on the grassroots, be in the ground. We need the black church. People talk about all the time, well, is Christianity the white man's religion? Well, I tell them, I said, well, if it is, why, in the scripture, there was no European. Nobody stepped foot on the continent. But on the opposite end, as a scholar of religion, I must also acknowledge that if Christianity is the black man's religion, we got effed up even worse. Because that's what they used.
Right. Now,
because it was present.
And I get that, because that's where the rules and the regulations and and everything comes from. Because you're right. Like when the Europeans came over to Africa and found this whole civilization of people, the church was definitely behind that. That was their backing. And it's crazy because it's like, I'm a God-fearing man, always been. But then you have to ask yourself, like a textbook, who wrote the Bible? Like who wrote the rules? Right. You feel me?
A black man from Egypt. His name was Athanasius.
Wow.
And so the more we kind of like expand and read, we start connecting the dots. And when we connect the dots, you start asking questions, not answering with answers, but you start asking questions like, why did they use Christianity to enslave? Like before they left the continent of Cote d'Ivoire and Sierra Leone, they literally would baptize our ancestors in the name of Jesus. And so it begins what one of my mentors calls the crisis of black consciousness.
Okay.
What does it mean to be black? What does it mean to be conscious? And what does it mean to actually fight for liberation? Because we can talk about it, we can read all the books, we can write all the all the narratives and journals, all that. But at the end of the day, if people who are in the streets are hungry, who are being murdered, who are being thrown in jail for no fault of their own, are still suffering, we ain't did nothing.
Right. But okay, so with all the marching, all the rioting, all of the protesting, like what's next? Like where do we go from here? Like what happens? What do we do to make this time and these things not be in vain? And then what can we do as a culture and as a people to help?
So the first step is we've seen a sustained amount of protests literally for the last 4 or 5 weeks. Right. I think it's like day 29 right now.
And it's still protesting. It's crazy.
We stay in the streets. We overwhelm the system. We organize. We literally take this moment by storm. Because when we do that, what we find is that not only are we forcing policy conversations to happen, like I've been able to go down to the state capitol because of everybody in the streets. They'll talk to me because I understand the political system and I'm unapologetic in my pursuit. I will not compromise with you because my people's lives are on the line.
Right.
They really began to understand that. And now we weren't able to get what we wanted, but we are in the driver's seat. The people, when they rise, it's nothing that the white supremacists can do. That system will come down. So the first step is, one, telling no lies and claiming no easy victories.
Telling no lies honest. And claiming no easy victories.
Claiming no easy victories. Emil Cabral.
Okay.
He used that quote, and I live by it. That one, we got to be honest about what it is that is happening in our streets. And I keep going back to the black woman because how can we ask the world to value black life when black men don't value black women?
Wow.
How can we ask there to be economic liberation when we don't even take care of our own personal finances? How can we ask the world to give us access to health care when we don't even go and get annual checkups?
Wow.
Or wear a mask in the coronavirus world?
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep.
So at the same time we're asking for this liberation, we have to do our parts. So that's step one, telling no lies. Then two, claiming no easy victories.
Got it.
We got so happy with the hate crime law. We got excited. And I was excited too, but we had worked 13, 14-hour days for 3 weeks straight. As soon as we claimed that easy victory, they had turned a fast one on us. We really didn't get anything in return.
So you saying shortly after you guys got the hate crime,
they voted at the same time.
Right, and the next one you're working on, because I want them to be aware, especially my Georgia people. The next one you're working on is the what's it called?
The citizen's arrest.
Citizen's arrest, and that has a lot to do with the Ahmaud Arbery case.
That's right.
Do you want to explain that one so they get it in what you're fighting for right now?
Most definitely. So remember, back in the 1860s, right after post-Reconstruction, they instituted a law with. Remember, we weren't citizens. We were black people, Negroes, right. Color folks. Right. I won't call them what they called us.
Right.
We weren't citizens. We weren't even human beings. So what they did was they changed the Georgia Constitution. They said, if you see a Negro, and they would call them freedmen, if you see a Negro, all you have to do is call him or her out by their name, and they would call us colored or come here N-word, and you could literally become enslaved again. And so the citizens just by calling out his name, it's called a perlocutionary act of enslavement. I know it's a real big fancy term. It literally just means,
break it down to layman's terms.
It means the very naming quality was enough for a white man to enslave a Negro. Just calling you out, because if another white person saw, because remember, everybody thought that you were free. So if another white person saw that you were being called the N-word or that you were being called a slave, they would have to assume then that you were a slave because you had no voice. You didn't have any autonomy. So they were able to define your reality for you.
Wow.
And so that's what citizen's arrest
was. That's almost like being in the street and the police pull up on you. And it's crazy that you say that and say, you're a prisoner. You're a criminal. And basically that's how people are getting treated before they're being charged. Because it used to be a time you have to go to court, but Breonna Taylor didn't get to go to court. Ahmaud Arbery didn't get to go to court. George Floyd didn't get to go to court.
But watch this. None of them actually did a crime.
Wow. So basically,
Arbery didn't do a crime.
That's like modern day slavery, because basically you're saying you're a criminal because I'm calling you a criminal. So you're a Negro because I'm calling you a Negro. So that puts you back in that space, and therefore that gives me the right to do what I did or I'm doing to you because I consider you that. Wow.
Yep. And remember, the very act of a human being in the eyes of the divine, in our Creator, is to do two things. Is one, to be able to co-create with God, but two, is also being able to name that which God had created. Every human being. If you have a baby, what is the very first act after you have that baby? You name that child.
Wow. And
so we have the function of being human beings, but the reality is the world we live in don't recognize it. That's white supremacy.
There you go. And
white supremacy is a culture. It's not a thing.
White supremacy is a culture and not based on skin color.
Right, but it manifests in colorism. It manifests in racism. Because racism is real, it's institutional.
Okay.
But notice how every
let's
time
talk about institutional racism.
Okay.
So in layman's terms, because institutional racism go from anything from drug wars and citizens arrest to high sentences for mediocre crimes to probation, parole. It's almost like it's a way to keep you just trapped into whatever it is. And I watched a documentary called "Slave by Another Name,"
yep.
and basically what they was doing back then was what they doing now is they would say, oh, hey, see you out, you're a Negro, and oh, you owe me money. Then they would take you to court, and then they had people working behind the court, and they would say, yeah, you do owe money, and then now they get to keep you as a slave until you pay off the debt. But what they would do is never let you pay off the debt, so therefore you will always be a slave. And I almost feel like that's what's going on with the streets. Like me coming from where I came from, that was a big thing. I don't want to get caught up. I don't want to be on probation or parole. And the people that I know, it's almost like you're still a modern day slave. They got a tab on you, you still have to pay money, and you're still not free. If you do anything that I don't like that you do, now I can charge you and make you do extra time because I told you one time before. So that's systematic. This is systematic racism.
Oh yeah, it works in so many ways. I mean, even when we look at the family, we talk about laws. I can go into laws all day long. There's so many laws in the books that just scream racism and scream that, oh, you're still a nigger. But
right.
let's look at the family, for instance. We think of the traditional family as what? A wife, a husband, and 2 kids, and maybe even a little dog.
Right. Maybe.
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 But the reality was that systematically, that concept was not authentic. It was created to sell homes in the 60s.
Created to sell homes.
Yeah, capitalism. It was created to sell homes.
So
because
the
remember,
setup
everybody
of a family. So hold up. So you saying a family was set up to sell homes?
Yeah.
Wow.
The familial unit of America that said you needed to have a husband, a wife, and 2 kids. That concept, when you look throughout history and you start reading, that wasn't present. Because even in the biblical days, you had entire familial units, a grandma, an auntie. Most of the women were together. The men were out doing whatever they had to do. But that didn't come about until the 60s with World War II. Because remember, all the men were overseas. All the women were at home. So you would oftentimes have a wife, or sometimes they weren't even married. You had the woman, maybe a sister, and you had about 3 to 4 kids. Okay. They all lived together. It was most of the time it was only 1 generation, maybe 2.
So you saying so in our culture it was more so of everybody lived in the house because there was only really 1 house and that's where everybody stayed. So if that was your family, aunties, uncle. I grew up like that. My grandmother's house was like 3-4 bedrooms, almost 20 people lived there, and we adjusted
because that's what our ancestors were able to live with. They had a village. They didn't have They didn't have neighborhoods. They had a village, because the neighborhood became the hood in the 90s, and then we no longer had neighborhoods. We just had the bluff. We had hoods. You had projects, because the project became a project. We'll leave it alone.
Right.
But yeah, the project was a project. It was a social project.
So the project was a project. Let's see how it was gonna play out.
To project whether or not we would project, but that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
But we almost compromised because we wanted what the white man had, what our oppressor had. We said we want a house because they were moving, remember, to suburbia. They were moving to the suburbs.
Right.
And they had all these beautiful big houses.
Right.
But who was living in them? And remember, when the black men came back from Vietnam, where did they go?
Right.
They couldn't even get VA loans.
They went to the hood. And that's when they started the red zoning.
Redlining.
Red lining. So it was like the neighborhoods we were in, the property values were lower, and where they were, and I forget what one of these newscasters it was. He was saying that his parents went to go buy a house in a suburban neighborhood, and they can afford it, and the realtor said this house is sold, and it was like, how? And then they couldn't get the house, so he went back and had one of his white friends say, hey, I want to purchase this house. Like, yeah, whatever. So then he went back behind him and bought it himself, and the realtor was mad, and they actually got into a fight about that. And that makes a lot of sense, because even now they don't, it's so much, they're moving back into the hoods. When you look at the old 4th Ward, I rode through the other day, it doesn't even look like the same place. This regentrification is crazy. So now it's like they're moving back to where we are and moving us out farther than we were, and they're taking our neighborhoods because they're closer to the city. And then so what does that mean for the property value? Because now the value goes back up because you're here.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And to me, that's crazy.
It's so deep. It's so deep entrenched. And the other thing is, I spent about 8 years when I was in the Army. I would stay often in Statesboro, which is South Georgia.
Right.
Where Georgia Southern. I went to Georgia Southern for undergrad. I'm at Morehouse now for seminary, finishing up now. But when we look at the difference in black agriculture, like actually just walking farms and looking, how they take care of the land, the land, which is the most divine thing outside of the black woman, I believe. But
you said the land is the most divine thing outside of the black woman.
I believe, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's a nurturer.
Mother Earth.
Right. Got it.
That's why I don't understand, and this is just an aside, but that's why I don't understand, and I always jump when people say Father God. I'm like, I would rather it be a mother, because mother gives, mother nurtures, mother
right.
empowers, mother takes care of. And so, but that's just me. That's just me and my ways.
Hey man, everybody that's why this is worth the conversation, because it's like, you know, it's all about perspective with me, because I just feel like sometimes the more information you have, the more you can take away what you understand. And I think even for me, just having this conversation, like I was totally under a whole nother definition of what white supremacy was, which is one of the reasons why I really want to talk to you, because I'm like, what am I not getting about this? Because I'm hearing so many different things. And I'm like, does it just mean that you're a racist? Does it mean that you don't like black people? Does it mean that you don't like white people? Like, what does it mean? Like, I don't get it. You know what I'm saying? But just talking to you, I'm pulling away the gems and the jewels. So now going forward, if I'm ever asked, I can be, you know, honest about my answer. You know, I understand what systematic racism is, because I've been through it, and I understand what it's like being a black man and actually, you know, having to go through the wealth gap, having to go through, you know, you're not going to get the job that you want over somebody, even if you went to college and your grades were better than theirs, or you got more experience. You know, it just, and it's just one of those things where if you come from, you know, a certain family, you know, you already got the up on it. It's just like giving somebody, it's almost like saying we running a 100-yard dash, and they blow the whistle, and I gotta wait, you know, a whole 60 seconds before I can start running, and you got that
Right.
head start on me. It's like, so how you not gonna get to the finish line before me?
Right. And you know, I say mother God in jest. I don't think God is a female nor a male. I think God
Right.
is a spirit. But when we look at, in Christianity, we have what we call the Trinity, of course. When we look at Jesus Christ, which is Yeshua in Hebrew, and Christos, meaning the anointed in Hebrew, Jesus Christ is oftentimes referred to as a male. But what we don't realize is then the Holy Spirit in the Hebrew is called the Ruach, or the Pneuma, which are both Hebrew words. One is breath, and then the other one is spirit, what essentially what it means. Which is oftentimes, but the one we miss is Sophia, which is wisdom. And so the Holy Spirit to me is always appropriate to be referred to as she. And so I call Jesus Christ he, I call the Holy Spirit she, and so God is. And
Right.
so I can refer to God as he or she, because people often get caught up in, well, God can't be a her or a female or a woman. I'm like, you're missing the point.
Right.
That God can be consumed by any and everything that God has created, because that's what the creator does. And if we want to be divine as a people, we must not only tap into that, but we must co-create with that creator. And we can do it. We can create new systems. We can create a new environment that is able to regenerate itself. We can create a new community that is able to protect its people without having to worry about whether or not we're going to get shot next door.
Right. Or around the corner. Or around the corner. I think we have no choice. I feel like, I don't know whether it's because of the COVID-19 and everything has slowed down. And even for me, it's just like, you know, I want my followers and the people that follow me, just like the people that follow you in your church and the people that follow you in NAACP, to understand it's going to take us breaking the barriers of worlds and breaking the barriers of stereotypes and reaching out to each other to connect, so that we can have infrastructure, so that we can create something that's special, so that we can protect each other, because, you know, knowledge is power, you know, unity is strength, you know, you on and on and on. But it's like, if we're not on the same page, and you know, we can get into that a totally different time, but I feel like personally, after watching everything I seen, being out in the front line, marching with, you know, you guys, I just really feel like, you know, the government, you know, is trying its best to divide and conquer. And it's just like, if we're already in the state and you're taking us back to feel like modern day slaves, you know, you rule by fear, you rule by confusion, you rule by intimidation. And I just feel like all this is a plot and a ploy for that. Like, I'm not a politician or nothing. I'm just a black man that's a taxpayer that, you know, made it from the hood. And I'm going, I never thought that I would have to be, you know, I'm going out to vote, and I'm looking and I'm going like, this shit ain't right. Like, I'm you know, I don't understand. And with that being said, like, what do you think we can do from here to deal with white supremacy real quick, and then what should we do as a unit, as a culture, and then what do we do to try to ensure that we have a fair election?
So those are 3 questions, and I'm gonna answer them. I'm not gonna take too long, I promise. The first one is, what can we do as far as white supremacy goes? Is one, we have to be able to be honest about who we are, and know who we are. And I know that seems very cliche, but it's so true, because a lot of us think that we are a collective of one race.
Right.
When even in terms of race, it becomes very problematic. And so I believe wholeheartedly that I'm black, but that's a language that I'm able to communicate with my people. But at the heart of it, we're human beings, and so embracing that humanity, and what does that mean? What does that look like? And so I got some readings that we can encourage, that people can actually follow as to what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
And please don't take my word, and this is for people who are watching too. Don't take my word for this. Research it yourself. I've done the research that I can come out on the other side and conclude and make these statements. If you don't agree with me, back it up. I'm open to learning. I have nothing to prove and something to share. The second thing I would say about the voting and those kinds of things, we have to I'm going to be honest. Black folk need to get their own political party. We need to get our own political party.
I was talking to Dr. West last week, and he said the same thing.
Yeah. Because we're hoping for, like, for instance, Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Right.
I hate, ask anybody who knows me, I hate when people say, well, you got to choose between two. I say, no, I don't. I will not choose, and I'm not calling either of them evil. I'm going to let you all decide who's evil. But I would not choose between evil versus more evil. I don't support evil, period. So if we are going to have a system that's designed that you got to choose between evil and eviler, dog, I'm out.
Right.
So we got to support, in addition to that, though, it's so much more than the president.
Right. And by the way, it starts on your state and local levels, because that's the things you guys fight. You're federal. Yeah. And it also, but that's the thing, like, we got to, sometimes we got to take small wins. We have to get small wins and put people in power like yourself. I mean, you got to be one of the youngest presidents in the NAACP, especially to be from my state. Like, I love that, because you're close to the people. What was the last question?
The last one, I can't remember, but I remember the response. It goes back to the 2 covenants that I made with myself: to tell no lies, claim no easy victories. But then I left out intentionally the last one. The last one is to protect our people. We have to protect our communities. I don't care if it's armed or unarmed. Listen, I'm all pro Second Amendment. I'm not here talking about you need to put your guns down, those kind of things. But we need to be disciplined. We need to be organized. And that takes patience. That takes leadership. I'm not saying I want to be the next Dr. King, because I don't. I want to be the first Major Woodall.
That's right.
Right? And so we oftentimes fall short, because we're looking for definition within historical realities that really don't don't complement who we are. We weren't called to only respond to historical events. We were called to co-create again. We can create a new reality. Just do it. And so when we talk about policing, so how do we protect our communities and make sure that our families are good, where there's not people, regardless if they're black or white, there's not people victimizing our people?
Right. We
have to defend Minnesota after George Floyd. My sister, Leslie Redmond, who's the president of NAACP there, a young sister, she's amazing, right? They organized the Minnesota Freedom Fund, where the Freedom Riders, where they literally walked the streets, made sure that nobody was rioting, looting, burning down barbershops that were in the black community. They protected their people.
Right.
That's what we got to do all over.
I mean,
because
we've been
ain't nobody come into my community and take it and kill my people, because they're gonna be the first one to answer for it.
Right. But the craziest thing is we've been doing that for the hood since day one. I remember that. Like, can't let them come to the hood and take what's ours. Listen, brother, Rev, you know what I mean? James Woodall, the El Presidente, man, I appreciate you for sharing game with my people, and like I said, this has been worth the conversation, and I continue to, support you and, whatever you got going on, and let's just stay in contact, man. I just wanted you to share the knowledge that you was giving me with the people that love me dearly. So